Hi guys, so this is long in coming, but I wanted to talk a little bit about how far I've gotten, or have read in Excession. I'm on chapter 3, Uninvited Guests. That would be page 84. I'm probably about, this would be a third. So I'm about a fourth of the way through the book right now. It's not even it's not a difficult book to read, but it's a difficult book to process. So sometimes I do read other things in between, like this. It's not even that long. It's like the standard 500-page book for a science fiction novel. But it's very, very science fiction dense. Like, here, you have a, and this is going to be some spoilery stuff, because you can't talk about Excession without talking about the content, and I'm going to explain the content to the best of my abilities, because I've sat down and thought about it, about how I'm going to start talking about this in, with, part 1, part 2, part 3, which part 2 is probably going to be, maybe months from now, maybe a month from now, I don't know, maybe even a week, who knows, but, no, I mean, just, I sat down and thought about how I was going to present this to you, and I'm not a scientist, and this is very accurate science heavy, according to people who know more about it than I do. Very physics heavy, this is the point of this world, and Ian Banks writes a lot of it, a lot of worlds like this, in his novels, from what I've heard. It is this is a post-scarcity society. And to bring that into perspective, this is a society that will go to war with somebody because they're bored. This is a society that will go to war with somebody because they are bored. They will extend their lives for thousands of years, or only live the typical lifespan that we live right now. They make drones that think and process like us and have backups upon backups upon backups of minds. Not memory, minds. That's the world that you are going to get into. So this is literal hard science fiction. It's very science heavy. The plot is basically driven by how science heavy this is. So as a warning, this book is not for everybody. If you really cannot handle hard science, you can watch go on ahead if you're interested in knowing what it's about, the first 84 pages are about. Watch my video, get spoiled, and move on with your life. Because there are probably, there are some concepts in here that, I don't know, but if you're one of those people who can literally accept what you're reading and just keep going, which is what I can do. I'm just oh, okay. I think in the 84 pages that I have read, I have probably just, page 11, I was okay. Alright. Okay. Uh-huh. Yeah, that makes sense. In the world, somehow. I don't know. I'll go with it. That's basically what this book is. And so, if you're one of those people who literally cannot handle that, don't read the book. Just spare yourself that. Watch my reviews, because, it doesn't hurt to, watch somebody talk about hard science, and maybe you'll start getting into it later on, or maybe you'll hear me talk about it and then tell you about it and go, my Shannon, thank you for talking about it so I don't have to read it. This is going to be one of those videos. I'm not kidding. But I do recommend reading it. It is very enriching, and you will most certainly, chapter 3 is very long. Chapter 3 is by the way, chapter 3 is this long. Just so you know. The chapters are, staggered, interestingly. Anyway, but again, if you're one of those people who just like look at like you read this and this is about as good as you're gonna get, don't do this don't do it to yourself. Don't do it. Don't. Like, you're probably the same people. You're probably the same type of person who cannot handle Game of Thrones, and this is heavier than Game of Thrones as far as like plot and character and talking about things that you like, because at least with Game of Thrones you're like, oh hey, that reminds me of something in real life. This is stepping into another world. This really is. So, and it's a foreign world that, like, there's barely anything identical to our world in this world. I don't know how Ian Banks did it, but he did it. So, like, really. If you're gonna read it, go into it cautiously, and if you have to DNF it because you're just like, I don't know what's going on, I'm not gonna hold it against you. And yes, I spent like a long time talking about that. Because it is one of those things. Anyway, so it starts out, the prologue starts out with this woman named, and let me get the last name, yeah, Dajiel Gillian. And she's been pregnant for about 1,000 years. Yeah, she's been pregnant for almost 1,000. I think it's almost 1,000 years. She's been pregnant for a while. She has been sequestered on this ship for a very long time. The ship, in on itself, it has like its own atmosphere. It's owned it. Like, this is like the top of the ship. It's like it's a miniature, like almost a little miniature Earth with like mountains and atmosphere. There's birds. They actually have fauna on there that are real, and they think, they feel, they do things, and they flitter around and they have fun. And Dajiel lives there, pregnant. And she has been pregnant for, I think it was, let's see, how long was she pregnant? Can't remember exactly how long she was, but I know it says, oh wait, yep. 40-year-old self-perpetuated pregnancy. Yeah, that's something in this book. So it starts out like that. The machine has like this flesh to flesh. The ship grew a part of itself to make it look humanoid, but not quite humanoid. It likes to dress like a female, so Dajiel always guessed that the ship, that part of the ship was female. But she was very much like, she did not have a chest. Like, there's nothing here, not much here. So, but she had long hair, and it's a ship. Ships don't have genders. You can try to create one, but I mean, it's a ship. It can kind of get it right, but, and there's an interesting philosophical point right there in just like the prologue. Why didn't the ship just make a perfect recreation of a female? Because it's obvious, because there's a female on there, and it's obvious that the little android being that the ship created, that's like very in tune with the ship, but also not in tune with the ship, to the point where like the little being has to ask the ship questions on its own, but it knows the ship. It's very interesting. It's like a part of the ship, but not. It's like an extension of the ship, but also not an extension of the ship. It's its own little being, really. Sort of. Anyway, but why didn't the ship make an actual person successfully? Like, that's a philosophical question that I don't know enough physics to get into. And I'm not going to, but that would be an interesting one, and I recognize that it's a philosophical question, and that's basically where it is. Let's see, you go on, and chapter 1... Let me actually get to chapter 1. It's a long prologue up. There we go. Chapter 1 starts like there, and just so you know, just to show you, there's going to be a lot of that in this book, and I suspect people who understand more about code than I do will be able to read this a little bit easier, but I follow it sort of. Sometimes, honestly, this, I just kind of, I look at the bold words, and then I just continue going on, and kind of treat this like I treated a lot of the long, grueling songs in Lord of the Rings. I just kept going. And this like went on for pages. And honestly, you kind of need to at least read this a little bit so you can understand what's going on. Some people found things, and I couldn't quite tell if this was the ship or not. It was probably a ship, but it's about, yes, I think it is a ship, and it was about like the second part of chapter 1, like Roman numeral 2. And it's divided in, the chapters are divided into Roman numerals. It's about a drome, that's named, called Cicella Ethelius. And it can hear humans. It gets into this little battle. And what this little drone does during the battle is, it keeps getting damaged, and it's typical, like, almost very like the AI mind, basically, like the big time AI mind gets pushed to the back and saved. It literally contorts space-time to move its mind, like the important part of its mind, into a different pocket of the universe, so it can fight, and so the enemy won't get a hold of that mind. And then how it continues to fight is it has like an ultimate backup that's a flesh sort of brain-like memory that gets destroyed because it's tissue. It literally, there's this tissue inside a drone, and it gets smoked. And then it switches to FM radio frequency and starts fighting that way, and that's how it's thinking, which is a lot slower than the other ship, but it's still thinking. And the other ship figures out that it's FM and starts translating it and starts fighting the little drone, and then the drone figures out that that's what the ship is doing, and it automatically switches to AM. Now, I did not figure that out on my own. My boyfriend read that part, because we're reading this together. He read that part before I got to that part, and then told me about it, because he knew I was going to get there anyway, and he was just like, I need to explain this part, because you're really not going to understand what just happened unless I explained it to you. And then he mentioned it to his buddy who recommended the book to us, and his buddy didn't even notice it until my boyfriend did, because my boyfriend is very into a lot of the FM AM stuff, because he used a lot of it when he lived in Alabama. So, yeah, that just to give you guys like an understanding of just how insane this world is, this universe is. There's that. And then you have, there's the culture, and then there's the affront. The culture and the affront are currently holding some sort of shaky peace together, and it's Mr. Gennar Hofen. Gennar Hofen. It's hyphenated, and it sounds like it's supposed to be, yeah. Anyway, and so he's the person who is trying to like put the affront at ease, and The front has, like, interesting names. The guy that we hear about, who Gunnar Hofen has the most relationship with, his name is Five Tide. Yeah, Five Tide. Chief, I think he's like a chief. And they're basically the equivalent of ISIS in this world. So, yeah, he's the equivalent of ISIS, and they're trying to settle this dispute that they have with ISIS peacefully. And it kind of works, but it doesn't really, because they're really trying to backstab these guys. And it's shown particularly at the end of chapter 2. The major, Five Tide, he's, I think... Yes, Five Tide. He's shown this transmission that just completely stuns whoever received it, or the AI that received it. And like, the transmission ends in gulp. The transmission ends with the word gulp. And it's talking about, like, because the drone, you follow the little drone. The drone is not dead. It gets defeated, but it's not dead. It's actually floating in space in a debris cloud. And they find this, like, completely untouched area of space. And so that's how chapter 2 ends. And the Affront wants to use this to undermine the culture. So there's that. And during that time, Gunnar Hofen is tasked to find the ship that and you figure out fairly quickly that the ship that he's tasked to find is likely the ship that we are introduced to in the prologue. So, yes, he has to find that, because that ship experienced this strange star, and I don't remember what the star is. Hold on. It's an artifact. A perfect black body sphere the size of a mountain in orbit around the unfeasibly ancient star. A star that is dead, I think, but is like a trillion years old, like a gazillion years old almost, and it stuns everybody, and they have some frequencies and some record of it, but it never really gets published or sent, because, like, the ships, plural, collectively decided that might not be a good idea to share it with everybody just yet, and so they leave to report back, except this one culture ship who just kind of starts going off on its own thing and starts really thinking for itself, almost, and it's interesting, and there's, like, there's parts of this book that I don't understand very well, and, like, that's, like, the limit of my understanding so far. And again, there's some parts in there I'm just like, okay, now what happened again? That really, like, because that's how I've had to reread parts of this book a couple of times, because again, it's so hard science that you have to sometimes go back and reread what you just read to get the plot. Anyway, so that's the first 80 pages, and this, what I have spoke with you about so far, is just a small sliver of what I picked up in this book in the first 84 pages, right? Yes, in the first 84 pages of this book concerning the technology that is in this book, and also just the plot. And I feel like I even have a menial understanding of the plot, but I still want to read it, because the more I read it, the more I'll start understanding it a little bit more, because that's how books are supposed to be. You're not supposed to completely and totally understand what you're reading. You're supposed to, like, think and try to figure out what you're reading, like, figure out exactly what's going on, because the characters are right there with you. They're trying to figure out exactly what's going on. and it's a lot of fun. And so far, I give this book a 5 out of 5 star rating. And only 5 out of 5 stars because I don't know enough about physics to know what Ian Banks may or may not have gotten wrong, or may not have just went the total and complete, come on, that's just not, no, that's so not part of what, no. I don't know enough to do that. So, yeah. I definitely encourage you to read this book, or at least start reading it. Maybe even start following along with me on it. With that being said, it's probably going to take me another month. I'm going to try and finish. What I want to do is finish chapter. As I'm on chapter 3, I want to finish chapter 3 before I want to get to chapter 4, and then AKA get to chapter 3. Maybe finish chapter 4. Maybe, I don't know. I want to get to a part of the book where, like, I can just, review it again. It'll probably be, like, I'll read chapter 4, review chapter 4, because that's just how this book is going to end up going, and I've never really done this before, and I'm very excited about the fact that I can. Anyway, I'm also in the process, I'm also reading Air Awakens by Elise Kova, and Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson, Drums of Autumn by Diana Gabaldon, and those two are going to take forever. I already know that, so I'm just reading it. And then I'm also reading not Lady Midnight. I'm sorry. I don't know why. I like the book. Lord of Shadows. I don't know why I keep thinking it's Lady Midnight, but for some reason I do. Anyways, that's what I'm reading right now. Tell me what you think. If you've read Excession, don't spoil it for me. It's very weird for me to say that because I like spoilers. Don't spoil it with me, but comment about what you thought of the first 84 pages, and allude, but do not spoil about how much more fun I'm gonna have reading the next probably 30 to 40 pages of this book. Alright, so everybody have a great night. Bye. And a happy 4th of July.